We have a lot to cover in today's video, including some more chatter on Pierre-Luc Dubois making his way to the Montreal Canadiens as early as this summer. Plus, we also have some trade talk around the St. Louis Blues and the New York Islanders. Plus, we also have other news, including an update on the Ottawa Senators sales process, all kinds of injury updates, and other news from around the league. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of NHL news to cover here today. All kinds of things from a variety of NHL teams from around the entire league. First up, I want to acknowledge an initiative started by the Montreal Canadiens today. I noticed a video that they had put out on their social media channels talking about mental health. They actually got 3 of their players to sit around and talk and ask questions and just have an open discussion about mental health, talking about some statistics and, as a country in Canada, how things are going with resources and things like that. And also, just kind of discussing their own personal situations and how they deal with things and things like that. And I just thought it was a terrific initiative. You typically do see a lot of different initiatives around mental health, but when it comes to professional athletes, you don't always see the players themselves talking so openly. So they had Jonathan Kovacevic, Michael Pezzetta, and Josh Anderson all talking in this video. And I just thought it was extremely well done. It looks like they also had a team-wide initiative today. I noticed in other things that they posted today that there was special shirts that all had like positive messages. I think I've seen players putting even messages on their tape, like on their stick blades and things like that. It's just a whole awareness piece today, which I thought, coming from a different perspective, was a great initiative, and I just want to acknowledge them on what I thought was just a fantastic job, well done. And I would certainly like to see more teams and more pro athletes open up and talk about that. I think it's a big help and will certainly inspire others to do so. I know, like, a lot of times you just, like I said, you hear initiatives from teams, you just don't always hear players being so open about it. So I thought that was a step in the right direction and take things further to hopefully, help people be more comfortable talking and being open and seeking assistance when needed, etc. So good job, Canadiens, on that. Johnny Gaudreau made his return to Calgary last night. It was certainly a very interesting game. Of course, the Calgary Flames fans gave it to him pretty hard with the boos, but they were respectful and gave him a nice standing ovation when they did the tribute video during the TV timeout. So very well done, I thought. Johnny certainly looked like he had, I'd say, probably a little bit of nerves, but for the most part played a solid game. Early in the first period, it wasn't even that long into it, he ended up getting a penalty shot. So it really brought the focus and attention on him that much more. He had the Flames goalie Danny Vladar beat high glove, but he missed wide, and he missed by a good margin, actually. So I'm sure he'd like to have that one back. Ultimately, the Flames end up winning the game. But it was certainly a very close game back and forth. So the game was great from an entertainment perspective. I thought Flames fans also certainly handled things well. They got the booing out of their system, but at the same time were respectful when needed to be. So certainly a very eventful night there last night in Calgary. We also got some incredibly sad news today as well in the Ottawa Senators. They announced today that assistant coach Bob Jones, who I believe was only 54 years old, has been diagnosed with ALS, which is really a horrible, horrible disease. You don't want to hear anybody. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy by any means. It's absolutely horrendous. We've just recently seen Leaf legend Boreas Salming suffer the effects from that. We know Calgary Flames assistant GM Chris Snow has been battling ALS for 3+ years. I think he was probably around 3.5 or so. I'm not sure exactly what the time frame is on him, but I know he's done quite well considering all things, and he certainly had probably a longer span than he was originally given. And a lot of people, when they're diagnosed with ALS, depending on where it's at the time, I've heard of diagnoses 6 to 12 months, 6 to 24 months, typically 2-3 years. Like it's horrible, and it just slowly deteriorates you, and it's just one of the worst diseases known to man. So we certainly want to offer our thoughts to Bob Jones. He is going to continue coaching, which I fully support. I can completely understand. If I were him, I would not want to change anything about my life that I didn't have to at the time, because over time you're not going to have a choice. Unfortunately, as the disease progresses, you lose functions and things you just can't do like you used to anymore. and you want to do them while you can. Especially he's been involved in the game of hockey, the bulk of his life. So I'm sure he doesn't want to lose what he's passionate about. So certainly sad news there. I want to offer our thoughts. And I know the Sens are going to be good to him. They've already made it known that whenever he needs time to step away, or if he's not up to doing something, that he's welcome to take the time he needs. From a personal standpoint, but certainly not news you want to hear for anybody as well. Staying with the Ottawa Senators for a moment, there is some updates coming from Gary Bettman. Of course, the NHL commissioner is in Montreal tonight to take in the Habs Bruins game and did do a media availability earlier. And he confirms that the Ottawa Senators sales process is officially underway. Of course, we already knew for some time that the team was for sale. We knew that they were making their books and financials available to interested parties, but now they're kind of in that next phase now where bids are actually starting to come forth. The process is taking a step in the right direction here. We've heard all kinds of various billionaires and different groups that have shown interest in this team. We don't know who the new owners are going to be, but considering where everything is at with the new arena project and everything, I'm sure they ideally don't want to be too long getting this sorted out. I know they had indicated before, hopefully in January, that we might know who the new owners are going to be. Of course, that's looking like it's going to be a little bit longer considering where we're at already this month. It's probably going to be February, March. I'm not sure exactly how long this process is going to take, but at least that's big news, though, to know that bids are coming through and the process is taking a big step in that direction. Now, we got several updates from around the league when it comes to some injuries and roster moves. The St. Louis Blues are activating and getting back defenseman Torrey Krug and forward Vladimir Tarasenko. But unfortunately, they lose Pavel Buchnevich, who goes on IR. Apparently, he had to have a procedure done due to an infection in his ankle. So that's certainly not good news. It shouldn't be out too long with that. The Toronto Maple Leafs have recalled forward Joey Anderson. He appears to be getting into the lineup. Right now, it looks like Zach Aston-Reese might be the extra player who's a scratch in the next game. The Pittsburgh Penguins have activated defenseman Chris Letang. So Letang is back, which is huge news for them. They moved Jan Ruda to LTIR, and Kasperi Kapanen now is officially on IR. So that's a couple of moves there to make room for Letang. They don't have a lot of room to spare within their LTI pool after doing those moves. The New York Rangers have recalled one of their top prospects, Will Cooley. He's expected to make his NHL debut in their next game. Sounds like Vitaly Kravtsov is likely going to be the healthy scratch. So we'll see, but certainly another young, exciting prospect with the Rangers. Be curious to see how he makes out. The Winnipeg Jets are getting back big defenseman Logan Stanley, and Ville Heinola is being sent down to the American Hockey League as well. So that's not going to bode well for Heinola, who I know his agent was quite, I guess you could say unsatisfied or unhappy with the amount of time he was getting in the NHL earlier this year. For him to go back to the minors is not great. I do wonder if the Jets, of course, they are expected to likely make some additions at the NHL trade deadline. I wonder if he might be a young defenseman they might consider using as trade bait to bring in some more reinforcements here for the playoffs. The Arizona Coyotes have also announced a signing today. Defenseman Juuso Välimäki, former Calgary Flame, who they picked up on waivers, has been signed to a one-year contract extension for $1 million. I believe he's making 1.5 now, so it's a little bit less money, but another year of an NHL contract here for Välimäki with the Arizona Coyotes. Another quick tidbit as well from Gary Bettman's media availability. Not only did he talk about the Ottawa Senators sales process being officially underway, but he also made mention that Montreal Canadiens owner Jeff Molson has always let him know that he would support expansion if a team were to come back to Quebec City. So that's obviously good news. I know there's been some speculation before that the Habs wouldn't support a team in Quebec City, that they would try to block it. And there's even been multiple reports that if the NHL ever tried to put another franchise in the Toronto area, that the Maple Leafs would block it. That I can't speak to. We don't have any quotes or news to suggest whether they would or they would not. Because there's been different rumors over time between, Hamilton, Markham, etc. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but there's certainly Quebec City had a team before, and there is huge interest there to get it back. Hard to say if or when it's going to happen, but I will say this, as we mentioned from NHL insider Chris Johnson back, I want to say maybe a couple months ago, and it does make a lot of sense that after expanding to Seattle, a lot of people thought the NHL either A, may never expand again, or B, if they do, it'll probably be a really long time. But then the pandemic hit, right? And that changed a lot. Obviously, a lot of people lost a lot of money. And one way to gain a lot of that money back and kind of, make the bottom line look a little bit better would be to get some more expansion money. So he had wondered and heard from some credible sources that don't be surprised if the NHL might surprise us and look to expand again in the near future. Right now, the conferences are even with 16 teams apiece. I would suspect if we ever did see expansion in the near future again, that they would probably want to make sure it stays even and maybe do one team per conference. So Quebec City would certainly be a leading contender, I would think, for the East. For the West, you're looking at places like Houston, maybe Kansas City. I don't really know. We don't really have any information to suggest that they're definitely going to. But it's just good to know that there will be no issues from the Montreal Canadiens. And the fact that Bettman's even talking about it just kind of makes you think, makes you wonder. And I'm sure for fans in that area that would love to see the Nordiques return, it certainly makes you optimistic for the future. Now, I want to talk a little bit as well about the New York Islanders. We're going to talk about some trade talk and a potential change. We know the Islanders have had a terrible run here in their last 10 games. At one point, they were firmly in a wild card spot. Now they're dipping down in the standings, and the last few games have gone from bad to worse. Last night's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs didn't go overly well. They started off good, but ended up with a 5-2 loss. They now play the Ottawa Senators next tomorrow night, and they have a few more games left before the All-Star break that, are games are against lower-ranking teams. So if they can't get through these teams, it's really kind of a sign of going rock bottom in a sense. Now, of course, defenseman Noah Dobson's out right now. That's not going to help things. He shouldn't be out too long, but he is banged up a bit. Now, Chris Botta, of course, is a well-connected person when it comes to Islanders resources. Was on Twitter last night suggesting that he, based on his own personal knowledge of the team, I'm not sure if he had any kind of whispers from anybody else that would be, connected as well, but based on his own knowledge and thoughts, that he wonders if the Islanders might make another coaching change. Of course, Lou Lamoriello, moved on from Barry Trotz, hired Lane Lambert. Right now, things aren't looking good for Lambert. At the same time, you have to think, though, that it's not entirely on the coaching staff. It's probably fair to say that this team, when it went on a couple of runs to the Eastern Conference Final, that they kind of maxed out their window, and now the window is kind of closed for them to accomplish that or better with this current group. I think they definitely need changes. I'm not convinced they need a full rebuild, but they certainly need a retool. They need some changes. This team needs a little bit more goal-scoring finish, that's for sure. They need a solid winger who can play with Barzal for starters, and they need to get a little bit more youth into this lineup. I mean, obviously, they do have some young players that are up and coming that look promising, but not nearly enough. They're an older, slower team. Even guys like on the blue line that are not overly old, like Ryan Pulock, appears to be slowing down, and he's not even all that old, but just watching him compared to when him and Pelech were one of the top defensive pairs in the league a couple of years ago, Pelech still looks pretty good in my opinion, but Pulock, on the other hand, definitely noticeably not quite as strong. They certainly need some change there. Chris Botta is wondering, of course, if Lou Lamoriello might maybe make some changes, possibly in or around the All-Star break. We know that we've seen him do this before. He tends not to be the most patient man in a sense when it comes to making coaching changes. And there's rumors about maybe Barry Trotz coming back. Botta mentioned this last night on Twitter. Of course, mentioning the fact that Barry Trotz is still technically an Islanders employee. Even though Lou fired him, you see coaches and GMs, they can be long-time, co-workers and friends and have a good relationship. It doesn't mean that the relationship is going to crumble because of being removed from your job. I mean, I'm sure Barry Trotz, like many NHL coaches, understand that, obviously it's a business, and that sometimes you just need a new voice and a change if the team's not doing well. He reported that Trotz and Lamoriello still talk fairly regularly. He's still employed. They wouldn't have to pay him any more money because he's already getting paid. Could Barry Trotz make a return? Would Barry Trotz be the answer? Unfortunately, it could be a help. I'm not sure it's completely the answer. I did see reports today as well that the Islanders, of course, are looking to, maybe make a trade or two. We've heard Elliotte Friedman link Vladimir Tarasenko as being a potential target of the Islanders in the last couple of days. And today I've seen reports about Brock Boeser maybe being on their radar in Vancouver as well. To me, it makes total sense that they should be aiming to add a natural goal-scoring type of winger or finisher. That, of course, with some of these guys, the concern is the cap hit for starters. Can they come in here and produce? You don't want to add another player who's already aging and is going to slow down and not produce. They have enough guys like that already who had that potential and just are not working out here the way that they were expected to, or when they were first given their contracts or brought in. So, they need to be careful here, but obviously I wouldn't be shocked to see Lou make a big trade, try to salvage the season. Wouldn't be shocked if he does make a coaching change. But he's also in the final year of his deal as well. I don't think we're going to see a GM change at this point in the season. That'll be handled in the off season. And, you got to think that, I don't know if he wants to keep working. I mean, we don't have any indication to suggest that he wants to retire. So, is this going to be a case where he's going to make some moves to try to salvage his job? They're just going to be a very interesting team to watch. Whether they trade for Tarasenko or Boeser or Barry Trotz comes back, I think we're likely going to see something. I mean, it's been a matter of quite some time now. We've been waiting for Lou to pull the trigger. It has not happened. Eventually, something's got to give here. Just what's his move going to be to try to get this team back, having a better chance to get into the playoffs? Let me know your thoughts on that, and we'll discuss more down in the comment section. Elliotte Friedman on the Jeff Merrick Show today ran through a number of St. Louis Blues players he believes could be traded at the NHL trade deadline. Of course, we just mentioned Tarasenko, who's been linked to the Islanders, Hurricanes, and a few other teams here as the deadline approaches. But Friedman also went on today to talk about the fact that he thinks that the Blues could be extremely active at the deadline. He said he does believe Tarasenko will be traded. He does believe Ryan O'Reilly is going to be traded. He also thinks there's a good chance Ivan Barbashev could be traded, and even defenseman Nico Mikkola as well. They could all be moved. He said that, the last time around when the Blues were, rumored to be selling things off, they came back and won the Stanley Cup. Well, Doug Armstrong probably doesn't think this team is capable of doing that. It's getting later into the season. Something's got to give. And we're probably going to see more activity, of course, than we did that time where he decided to kind of double down on that group and give them a chance, and they came through. But like I said, the odds of that happening again, slim to none. So to me, activity is likely going to be in the category of change here. Just exactly what's it going to be. One name that they did link here, Mikkola, for example, they both agreed would be an excellent fit with the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, these two teams have made a trade in the not too distant past. Klim Kostin, of course, former Blue, is now in Edmonton Oiler, and he's done relatively well. That was a good pickup by Edmonton. Wouldn't be shocked for them to come back and try to figure something out. But Mikkola is a defenseman with, that's not afraid of the rough stuff, plays the left side, some good size, good bite to him. Probably would be the kind of D-man that the Oilers would be looking for. So we could see another potential Oilers and Blues trade here at the deadline. We'll have to wait and see. But Friedman mentions that the Blues should be extremely active, and we could see a lot of activity there. Nick Kypreos is stirring things up again when it comes to Pierre-Luc Dubois, saying that the Winnipeg Jets centerman is not changing his mind. Even if the Jets win the Stanley Cup, there's absolutely zero chance he signs anywhere long-term and wants to still make his way to Montreal. Now, Dubois, of course, is still a year away after this year from being an unrestricted free agent where he can make his own choice. But, Kypreos goes on to say that he feels that either he signs a one-year deal and works his way to UFA status, but even with that, feels there's a good chance that Dubois will end up in Montreal this summer, and it would have to be done via trade, of course. So, that's bad news for the Jets, who are having a phenomenal season. But obviously, if this is true, which wouldn't be shocking, Dubois does not want to stay in Winnipeg on a long-term basis. I mean, if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff and we have a good season here, which they're obviously well on pace to do, then when next offseason hits, I would be having a long, hard discussion with Dubois' agent. And if there's no way they're going to do anything but sign a one-year deal to make it to UFA status, I think at that point you kind of have to consider a trade, and they could certainly get a good return for a player like Dubois. I don't know what Montreal would want to do, but that's the next question now, is if Montreal knows that he really wants to be there, would they not just wait and sign him as a UFA when they're able to, or would they want to give up assets to get him there a year sooner. I don't know that they would really want to do that. The team's going to be rebuilding. Does it really make sense for them to do that? Will Dubois end up signing a 1-year contract and then go to Montreal on his own? I don't know. To me, what Kiprios is saying does kind of make sense. I'm not completely sold that's how it goes down. At the same time, I'm not sold either that he will stay Winnipeg long term. I know when the Jets were in Montreal not long ago, it was brought up by the media. Dubois was asked questions about it and, of course, didn't really want to talk about it. Said he was focused on his team and obviously doing well and getting 2 points in a W, which is really the best answer you can hear from him. But I do think long term, I would be surprised if he stays in Winnipeg. But right now, it's a little early to say that he'll be in Montreal as early as this summer. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out. Let me know your thoughts on all of that and more down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, of course, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.